The wheat field stretches golden under the 5:47 a.m. Iowa sky. Emma Stone steps carefully between the rows, her worn boots making no sound on the dew-dampened earth. She pauses mid-stride, tilting her head to catch the rumble of a diesel engine 847 meters away, a precision her neighbors would find impossible to explain. The smile on her weathered face seems gentle enough, but her blue eyes scan the distance from the red barn to Highway 12 with the calculated focus of someone measuring firing angles. A meadowlark calls from the fence post. Emma's hand doesn't move toward the concealed sidearm beneath her flannel shirt, but her body shifts almost imperceptibly into a position where she could draw, aim, and fire in under 2 seconds. To anyone watching, she looks like every other farm girl in Millbrook, checking her family's wheat crop before breakfast. They have no idea what those steady hands have done, or what they're still capable of doing when family is threatened. The diesel engine grows closer. Emma recognizes the particular whine of Marcus Rothwell's pickup truck before she sees it cresting the hill. Her jaw tightens just enough to betray the steel beneath her farm woman facade. "What's a farm girl gonna do when trouble comes looking?" she murmurs to the morning air, already knowing the answer that Millbrook isn't ready to discover. "I'm building a community of people who believe in the power of family loyalty and respect for those who've served our country. If you also believe that no one should be allowed to threaten your family without paying a price, hit that like button to support the spirit of protecting loved ones. Subscribe to see more stories about real courage and justice in action. And thank you to anyone who has served or has family in the military. If you understand the value of protection, that thanks button helps me share more stories about true bravery. Because Emma is about to prove that sometimes the most peaceful-looking people are the most dangerous when pushed too far. Emma Stone learned to disappear in plain sight during 3 tours in Afghanistan. Now she practices the art in Millbrook, Iowa, population 4,200. Every morning she checks the barn locks 3 times, chooses the corner booth at Murphy's Diner where she can see both exits, and counts the number of people in any room within 30 seconds of entering. The good folks of Millbrook know her as Grace's quiet twin sister, the one who came home after their parents died in a car wreck 2 years ago to keep the family farm running. They don't know about the 73 confirmed kills Emma earned as a Marine sniper. They've never seen the scars from shrapnel that map her left shoulder like a topographical chart of violence. They certainly don't suspect that the arthritis that makes her favor her right leg is actually the result of a Taliban rocket that should have killed her entire unit. Emma's cover story is perfect in its simplicity. The grieving daughter who traded military service for wheat fields and Sunday church services in a town where the most dangerous thing is usually a broken-down tractor. The morning routine never varies. Emma rises at 5:30, checks the perimeter of the property with eyes that automatically catalog potential threats and defensive positions, then heads to Murphy's Diner for coffee, and whatever gossip Helen Murphy feels like sharing. This Tuesday morning brings the usual cast: Farmer Bill Crawford complaining about corn prices, postal worker Janet Webb sorting mail, and retired teacher Eleanor Foster holding court at Table 4 with her opinions on everything wrong with the world. Emma settles into booth 12, back to the wall. Clear sight lines to the front door and kitchen entrance. Helen Murphy brings coffee without being asked. The 70-year-old woman has been feeding Millbrook for 30 years and knows everyone's preferences by heart. Grace is looking peaked lately, Helen observes, her voice carrying the particular tone of someone fishing for information. She's been keeping to herself more than usual. Teaching kindergarten is exhausting, Emma replies, though her twin sister's recent withdrawal hasn't escaped her notice either. Grace has always been the social butterfly between them, the one who thrives on community connections and small-town friendships. Something has been wrong for weeks, but Grace deflects every attempt at conversation with forced smiles and changes of subject. The diner door chimes. Emma's peripheral vision catches the entrance of Marcus Rothwell and his shadow, Jake Morrison. Every instinct Emma developed during 8 years in active combat screams at her to assess the threat level, catalog weapons, identify exit strategies. Instead, she takes a careful sip of coffee and lets her farmer's daughter mask stay firmly in place. Marcus Rothwell owns half of Millbrook and wants to own the other half. His construction company has been buying up family farms for the past 5 years, turning agricultural land into strip malls and subdivision developments. At 35, he carries himself with the particular arrogance of a man who's never been told no by anyone who mattered. His companion, Jake Morrison, stands 6 feet 4 inches of pure intimidation. A former bouncer, whose idea of conflict resolution involves making problems disappear through carefully applied physical pressure. "Emma Stone," Marcus calls across the diner, his voice carrying the false warmth of a politician during campaign season. "Mind if we join you for a minute? Got a business proposition that might interest you." Emma's training kicks in automatically. She evaluates the tactical situation with rapid-fire precision. 12 civilians in the diner, none carrying visible weapons, multiple exits available, but Jake Morrison positioned to control the front door. Marcus slides into the booth across from her without waiting for permission. Jake remains standing, hands relaxed but ready, positioning himself to block her retreat to the kitchen. "I hear you're doing a fine job keeping your daddy's farm running," Marcus continues, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Must be hard work for a woman on her own, especially with Grace having her hands full at the school." The implied threat hangs in the air like smoke. Emma's expression doesn't change, but her left hand shifts slightly closer to the butter knife on the table. Not much of a weapon, but in the right hands, even a dull blade can find soft tissue and cause serious damage. "We manage just fine," she says quietly. "I'm sure you do, but managing and thriving are 2 different things. I've got a buyer interested in your property. $847,000 for the whole section. That's more than double what your daddy paid for it 20 years ago. Emma knows the land is worth half that amount. The generous offer is designed to make refusal seem unreasonable, even suspicious. It's a classic manipulation tactic, and she recognizes it immediately. "The farm isn't for sale," she says, her voice still calm, but with an edge that makes Jake Morrison shift his weight. Marcus's smile falters for just a moment. He's clearly not accustomed to anyone in Millbrook turning down his offers. "Now, Emma, let's be practical here. You're a young woman with your whole life ahead of you. Surely you don't want to spend the next 30 years wrestling with tractors and worrying about weather patterns. I said the farm isn't for sale." Emma's tone doesn't rise, but something in her posture changes. A subtle straightening of the spine, a shift in the angle of her shoulders that Jake Morrison's street-fighting experience recognizes as dangerous. "Was there anything else you wanted to discuss?" Marcus Rothwell didn't build his empire by accepting the first no. His eyes narrow as he studies Emma's face, looking for weakness or leverage. "Your sister Grace teaches at the elementary school, doesn't she?" "Lovely woman. Very dedicated to her students. I sit on the school board, you know. We're always evaluating teacher performance, making sure our educators meet the highest standards." The threat is barely veiled. Emma's hand stops moving toward the butter knife because a better weapon has just presented itself. Knowledge is power, and Marcus Rothwell has just revealed exactly how far he's willing to go to get what he wants. Grace is an excellent teacher, Emma says carefully. The parents and children love her. Of course they do, but you know how quickly public opinion can change. One complaint from the wrong parent, one question about classroom management or teaching methods. Marcus spreads his hands in a gesture of helpless inevitability. These things have a way of snowballing. Emma Stone has killed men for less direct threats than this one. Her fingers curl slightly around the coffee cup handle as she calculates the distance to Marcus's throat, the angle needed to drive porcelain fragments into his carotid artery. Instead, she meets his gaze with the steady calm of someone who has looked down rifle scopes at human targets and pulled the trigger without hesitation. "Mr. Rothwell," she says quietly, "I think you should leave my family out of any business discussions." Something in her tone makes both men pause. Jake Morrison's hand moves instinctively toward his jacket, while Marcus leans back slightly in the booth. For just a moment, the mask slips, and they catch a glimpse of the predator that lives beneath Emma Stone's farm woman disguise. Then the moment passes. Emma's smile returns, gentle and unassuming, and she takes another sip of coffee as if they've been discussing weather patterns. "I appreciate the offer," she says politely, "but like I said, the farm isn't for sale." Marcus Rothwell slides out of the booth with carefully controlled movements. His face shows nothing but mild disappointment, but his eyes promise that this conversation isn't over. "Well, you think about it, Emma. Sometimes what seems like a good deal today looks even better tomorrow." They leave the diner with the measured pace of men who aren't retreating, just regrouping. Emma watches them through the window until Marcus's truck disappears over the hill. Then she allows herself 30 seconds to process what just happened, her trained mind already developing tactical responses to various scenarios. Helen Murphy appears at her elbow with fresh coffee and a concerned frown. "That Marcus Rothwell's been sniffing around a lot of farms lately," she observes. "Bill Crawford says he made an offer on the Peterson place last month. Way more than it's worth." "Did the Petersons sell?" Emma asks, though she already suspects the answer. "Took the money and moved to Florida. Their boy said they were tired of fighting City Hall every time they wanted to expand or modernize." Helen's voice drops to a conspiratorial whisper. "Course, it helped that the county suddenly started finding all kinds of code violations on their property. Amazing how problems multiply when you're not cooperative." Emma nods thoughtfully. The pattern is becoming clear, and it's more sophisticated than simple intimidation. Marcus Rothwell has built a machine designed to acquire property through a combination of generous offers, bureaucratic pressure, and carefully orchestrated social isolation. The fact that he mentioned Grace specifically means Emma and her sister are already in his crosshairs. Grace Stone stands in her empty kindergarten classroom at 4:15 p.m., staring at the stack of resignation letters on her desk. 3 parents have pulled their children from her class in the past 2 weeks, each citing vague concerns about teaching methods and classroom environment. The complaints don't make sense. Her evaluations have been exemplary for 6 years, and she's never had a single disciplinary issue or parent complaint. The door opens behind her. Principal Janet Walsh enters with the careful expression of someone delivering bad news. At 52, Janet has been running Millbrook Elementary for 15 years, and she's never had to have a conversation like this one. "Grace, we need to talk about some concerns that have been raised about your classroom management," Janet begins, her voice strained with obvious discomfort. "What specific concerns?" Grace asks, though she already knows this conversation has been orchestrated from somewhere outside the school walls. My students are meeting all their learning objectives. Behavior incidents are down compared to last year, and parent conference feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. Janet shifts uncomfortably. She's holding a manila folder that she doesn't want to open. There have been anonymous complaints filed with the district office. Questions about your emotional stability. Suggestions that you might be under personal stress that's affecting your professional judgment. Grace feels something cold settle in her stomach. Anonymous complaints are impossible to defend against because there's no accuser to confront, no specific incidents to address. Janet, you've known me for 6 years. Have you ever seen anything in my behavior that would justify concerns about emotional stability? Of course not, Janet replies quickly. But the district requires me to investigate all complaints, even anonymous ones. They're asking for a formal review of your performance, including classroom observations and student interviews. The trap is elegant in its simplicity. Even if Grace emerges from the review completely vindicated, the process itself will create doubt in parents' minds and provide ammunition for future attacks. Who filed these complaints? Grace asks, though she already suspects they'll be untraceable. I can't release that information, but... Janet hesitates, glancing around the empty classroom as if checking for listeners. Grace, I've been in education for 25 years, and I know a hit job when I see one. Someone wants you gone, and they're using the system to make it happen. Grace sinks into her desk chair. She's always known that teaching in a small town meant navigating local politics, but she never imagined becoming a target herself. What should I do? Document everything, Janet advises. Keep records of all your interactions, save every email, and don't give them any ammunition to use against you. And Grace? She pauses at the door. Maybe you should ask your sister for advice. Emma's always struck me as someone who knows how to handle difficult situations. After Janet leaves, Grace sits alone in her classroom, surrounded by the bright decorations and learning materials that represent 6 years of dedicated work. The anonymous complaints feel like shadows creeping across everything she's built, and she doesn't know how to fight an enemy she can't see or identify. Her phone buzzes with a text message from an unknown number. Teaching is such a vulnerable profession. So many ways for things to go wrong. Grace stares at the screen until the message fades, her hands trembling slightly as the reality of her situation becomes clear. Someone is hunting her, and they're using her career as the weapon. Emma Stone enters her sister's classroom at 4:45 p.m. to find Grace staring at her phone with the expression of someone who's just received a death threat. The twins share an intuitive connection that has nothing to do with mystical nonsense and everything to do with 28 years of reading each other's emotional signals. Emma knows immediately that her morning conversation with Marcus Rothwell was just the opening move in a larger campaign. "What happened?" Emma asks, settling into one of the tiny kindergarten chairs that makes her feel like a giant. Grace hands over her phone without speaking. Emma reads the anonymous text message with the calm focus of someone analyzing enemy communications. "How long has this been going on?" 2 weeks, Grace admits, her voice barely above a whisper. "Parents pulling their kids from my class, anonymous complaints to the district office, and now this. Emma, I don't understand what's happening." Emma studies her sister's face. Grace has always been the gentle one, the twin who sees the best in everyone and assumes good intentions, even when evidence suggests otherwise. The idea that someone might deliberately target her for destruction is almost incomprehensible to her trusting nature. "It's Marcus Rothwell," Emma says quietly. "He made me an offer this morning. $847,000 for the farm. When I turned him down, He made some comments about your teaching career and how quickly things can change. Grace's eyes widen. She's finally beginning to understand that her professional problems aren't random bad luck or unfortunate coincidences. He's doing this because you wouldn't sell the farm? He's doing this because he's used to getting what he wants, and he's built a system to punish people who don't cooperate. Emma's voice carries the steady calm that Grace remembers from their childhood. The tone Emma used when neighborhood bullies got too aggressive, right before she made them regret their choices. "What am I supposed to do?" Grace asks. "I can't fight anonymous complaints or defend myself against accusations that don't exist." Emma stands up from the tiny chair, her movements carrying a fluid precision that seems out of place in the cheerful classroom. "You're not going to fight this alone," she says, and something in her tone makes Grace look at her twin sister with new eyes. "Grace, there are things about me that you don't know. Things I couldn't tell you because they were classified, or because I didn't want you to worry." "What kind of things?" Emma hesitates. The decision to reveal even partial truths about her military service feels like stepping onto a battlefield where there's no cover and no retreat. "I wasn't just a soldier, Grace. I had a very specific job, and I was very good at it. The kind of good that means people like Marcus Rothwell don't scare me." Grace stares at her sister's face, seeing something she's never noticed before. A hardness around the eyes, a stillness in her posture that speaks of violence held carefully in check. "Emma, what exactly did you do in the Marines?" Before Emma can answer, the classroom door opens. Marcus Rothwell steps inside with the confident smile of someone who owns the building and everyone in it. Behind him, Jake Morrison fills the doorway like a human barricade, while a third man Emma doesn't recognize, thin, sharp-suited, carrying a briefcase, completes their intimidation triangle. "Ms. Stone," Marcus addresses Grace with the mock formal tone of someone delivering an ultimatum. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion, but I wanted to discuss some concerns that have been brought to my attention regarding your classroom management." Emma moves slightly, positioning herself between Marcus and her sister. The shift seems casual, but it places her within striking distance of all three men, while giving Grace a clear path to the exit. "Mr. Rothwell," she says politely, "I wasn't aware you had business with my sister." "Your sister is a public employee, and I'm a concerned citizen," Marcus replies, his smile never wavering. Recent complaints suggest that Ms. Stone might be experiencing personal stress that's affecting her professional performance. The man with the briefcase steps forward. Emma's peripheral vision catches the outline of something bulky beneath his jacket. Not a weapon, but possibly recording equipment. "I'm attorney Kevin Sharp," he announces, representing concerned parents who wish to remain anonymous. "We're here to inform Ms. Stone that formal complaints have been filed with the State Education Department regarding her fitness to teach." Grace makes a small sound of distress. Emma's hand moves to rest on her sister's shoulder, a gesture that looks supportive, but positions her to push Grace behind the heavy wooden desk if violence erupts. "What specific complaints?" Emma asks. Kevin Sharp opens his briefcase and removes a legal document. Emma notes that he keeps his distance, close enough to seem official, far enough to run if things go sideways. Allegations of emotional instability, inappropriate interactions with students, and failure to maintain professional standards in the classroom. "That's ridiculous," Grace whispers, but her voice lacks conviction. The accusations are so vague and devastating that defending against them seems impossible. Marcus Rothwell's smile widens. He's enjoying the destruction of Grace's career almost as much as the leverage it provides against Emma. These investigations can take months to resolve, he says conversationally. During that time, Ms. Stone will likely be placed on administrative leave, pending the outcome. Very difficult to find another teaching position with that kind of cloud hanging over your record. Emma Stone has heard enough. Her body language shifts imperceptibly, as 8 years of military training overrides 2 years of civilian restraint. The change is subtle but unmistakable. The straightening of her spine, the slight widening of her stance, the way her hands relax into ready positions that Jake Morrison recognizes from his bouncer days as the prelude to violence. "Gentlemen," Emma says quietly, "I think you've said what you came to say." Marcus catches the change in her tone. His smile falters as he suddenly remembers the steel he glimpsed in Murphy's diner that morning. "Of course, we don't want any unpleasantness. This is purely a legal matter, handled through proper channels." "Then I'm sure you won't mind handling it somewhere else," Emma replies, her voice still calm, but carrying an undertone that makes Kevin Sharp unconsciously step backward. Jake Morrison moves slightly, a calculated adjustment that puts him in a better position to control the room. Emma tracks his movement with eyes that have calculated killing angles across Afghan valleys. For just a moment, the kindergarten classroom feels like a battlefield, with children's artwork and alphabet charts serving as incongruous backdrop to a confrontation that could turn deadly in seconds. Then Marcus Rothwell makes his choice. He's not ready for open warfare, not when his systematic approach has been working so well. "We'll be in touch, Miss Stone," he tells Grace, his tone suggesting that this conversation has accomplished exactly what he intended. "I'm sure we can resolve these concerns in a way that serves everyone's best interests." The 3 men file out of the classroom. Emma doesn't move until their footsteps fade down the hallway, and she hears the external doors close behind them. Only then does she turn to Grace, who is staring at her twin sister with an expression of dawning comprehension. "Emma," Grace says slowly, "what exactly did you do in Afghanistan?" Emma Stone looks at her sister. The gentle kindergarten teacher who believes in the basic goodness of people, who has never had to kill or be killed, who deserves to live in a world where Marcus Rothwell doesn't exist. The decision she makes in the next few seconds will change both their lives forever. "I kept bad people from hurting good people," Emma says finally. "And Grace, I got very, very good at it." The confrontation comes 3 days later at 3:42 p.m., outside Murphy's hardware store on Main Street. Grace walks toward her blue pickup truck, arms full of art supplies for her classroom, if she still has a classroom after the district review concludes. Emma watches from across the street, positioned behind the post office where she has clear sight lines and multiple escape routes. Marcus Rothwell and Jake Morrison emerge from the shadows between buildings like predators who have finally cornered their prey. Emma's training kicks into overdrive as she calculates distances, identifies weapons, and prepares for what she knows is coming. "Ms. Stone," Marcus calls out, his voice carrying across the quiet street. "We need to finish our conversation." Grace freezes beside her truck. Emma can see her sister's hands trembling as she clutches the art supplies. The street is busy enough to provide witnesses, but isolated enough for Marcus to feel confident about escalating the confrontation. Jake Morrison positions himself between Grace and the driver's door. At 6 feet 4 inches, he uses his size like a weapon, looming over Grace's 5'6" frame with practiced intimidation. "You've been causing problems for important people," he growls, his voice carrying the particular menace of someone who enjoys frightening smaller targets. Emma starts moving. Her approach is casual, unhurried, giving no indication of the violence she's prepared to unleash. She crosses Main Street with the relaxed gait of someone running errands, but her eyes never stop calculating angles and distances. "I haven't caused problems for anyone," Grace says, her voice barely steady. "I'm just trying to teach kindergarten." Marcus steps closer. Emma notes that he keeps his hands visible, relying on Jake Morrison for physical intimidation while maintaining his own plausible deniability. "Teaching requires community support," he says conversationally. "Hard to maintain that support when parents lose confidence in your abilities." "What do you want?" Grace asks, though she already knows the answer. "I want your sister to be reasonable about my generous offer for your family farm," Marcus replies. "And I want you to understand that sometimes families have to make difficult decisions to protect each other." Jake Morrison reaches out to grab Grace's arm. Emma's restraint finally snaps. "I'm genuinely curious about Emma's decision to reveal her true identity. Do you think she should use her military skills to protect Grace, even knowing it will change both their lives forever?" Share your thoughts in the comments about how far we should go to protect family, because what Emma does next will determine the fate of the entire neighborhood. Emma appears behind Jake Morrison like a ghost materializing from thin air. Her approach has been so quiet that neither man realizes she's there until she speaks. "Gentlemen," she says calmly, "I think you should step away from my sister." Marcus spins around, his confident expression faltering as he recognizes the shift in tactical advantage. Jake Morrison turns more slowly, his street-fighting experience telling him that Emma Stone is no longer pretending to be a harmless farm girl. "This is a private conversation," Marcus says, but his voice lacks its earlier conviction. "Not anymore," Emma replies, positioning herself within arm's reach of both men. Her posture appears relaxed, but Grace recognizes the subtle changes: the balance shift to the balls of her feet, the loose positioning of her hands, the way her eyes track every movement, without seeming to focus on anything specific. Jake Morrison makes his mistake. He reaches for Emma with the same casual aggression he's used to intimidate dozens of smaller targets. Emma's response is surgical in its precision and devastating in its effectiveness. 15-56-14. Emma sidesteps Jake's grab and uses his forward momentum to drive his wrist into the truck's door handle. The metallic snap of breaking bones echoes across Main Street. 15-56-16. She pivots, using Grace's car keys like brass knuckles to strike the nerve cluster below Jake's left ear. He drops to one knee, his coordination destroyed by precisely applied pressure. 15-56-18. Marcus lunges forward, trying to grab Emma from behind. She catches his wrist, applies a joint lock that requires exactly 4 pounds of pressure to dislocate his elbow, and uses his own weight to drive him face first into the truck's tailgate. 15-56-20. Both men are neutralized, conscious but immobilized, while Emma stands between them and Grace, with barely elevated breathing. 15-56-22. The entire confrontation is over. 8 seconds of controlled violence that leaves no doubt about Emma Stone's true capabilities. A crowd gathers quickly. Millbrook has never seen anything like the clinical precision with which their quiet farm girl dismantled 2 larger opponents. Emma helps Jake Morrison to his feet, her touch gentle despite the damage she's just inflicted. "You should get that wrist looked at," she tells him conversationally. "Clean break. Should heal fine with proper treatment." Marcus Rothwell staggers upright, blood trickling from his nose where it connected with the truck's metal surface. His eyes hold a mixture of rage and fear as he stares at Emma. Rage at being humiliated in public. Fear of someone whose capabilities he completely misjudged. "You'll regret this," he hisses, but the threat lacks conviction. Emma's smile is gentle, almost maternal. It's the same expression she wore while discussing crop rotation with neighbors, but now it carries undertones that make Marcus step backward, involuntarily. "Mr. Rothwell," she says quietly, "I think you should know that I don't make threats. I just solve problems." The FBI arrives in Millbrook exactly 72 hours later. Their investigation unfolds with the methodical precision of agents who know exactly where to look for evidence of corruption. Marcus Rothwell's construction company has been inflating government contracts for 5 years, using intimidation tactics to eliminate competitive bidding, and channeling profits through shell companies owned by his family members. Emma watches from her kitchen window as federal agents load boxes of evidence from the Rothwell construction offices. The investigation uncovers $2.3 million in fraudulent billing, leads to 23 arrests throughout the county, and triggers a complete restructuring of local government oversight. Grace returns to her classroom the following Monday to find letters of apology from the 3 parents who withdrew their children. The anonymous complaints to the district office have been traced to Deputy Rick Coleman, who is currently facing federal charges for his role in the conspiracy. Principal Janet Walsh stops by during lunch to inform Grace that the state education department has dismissed all accusations and commended her professional conduct. "Your sister certainly knows how to handle difficult situations," Janet observes, glancing out the window where Emma can be seen working in the school garden with obvious tactical awareness. Grace nods thoughtfully. She's spent 3 days processing the revelation that her twin sister is a trained killer who has been living in deep cover for 2 years. "She's always been protective," Grace says, which is true as far as it goes. The woman approaches Emma at the farmer's market on Saturday morning. She moves with the same controlled precision that Emma recognizes in her own carefully cultivated movements. Beth Woods appears to be browsing tomatoes, but her eyes scan the crowd with professional thoroughness, and her hands bear the subtle calluses that come from weapons training. "Emma Stone?" Beth asks quietly, though her tone suggests she already knows the answer. Emma nods, noting that Beth positions herself to control their conversation while maintaining clear sightlines to potential threats. It's exactly what Emma would do in the same situation. "Beth Woods," the stranger introduces herself. "I represent some mutual friends who are concerned about your recent visibility." The code phrase makes Emma's blood run cold. Nick's protocol is supposed to be dormant, a network of female veterans placed in small communities for deep cover observation and protection. Emma was told her active duty ended when she came home to Millbrook. "I thought the network was inactive," Emma says carefully. Beth's smile carries no warmth. She's obviously been active much longer than Emma, and her edges haven't been softened by 2 years of farming. "The network never sleeps, Emma. We just go deeper underground when necessary." She hands Emma a business card for a local coffee shop. The address is meaningless, but the numbers are a coordination protocol Emma memorized 8 years ago. "Someone has been targeting small towns with embedded assets," Beth continues. "Marcus Rothwell wasn't working alone, and his operation wasn't focused on real estate development." Emma feels the peaceful life she's built crumbling around her. Grace is safe. The corruption has been exposed, but the victory comes with a price she didn't anticipate. "What do you need from me?" "The same thing you've always provided," Beth replies. "Protection for people who can't protect themselves. But this time, you won't be working alone." As Beth walks away, Emma stares at the business card and realizes that her war never really ended. It just moved to a different battlefield. The farm girl disguise that served her so well is now a liability. Marcus Rothwell's defeat has painted a target on her back that will attract enemies she can't fight from behind a plow. Grace appears at her elbow, drawn by some twin instinct that recognizes emotional upheaval. She takes one look at Emma's face and understands that their quiet life in Millbrook is about to change forever. "What's a farm girl gonna do now?" Grace asks softly. Emma pockets the card and puts her arm around her sister's shoulders. The wheat fields stretch golden around them, but they no longer represent safety and peace. They're just another battlefield where Emma Stone will have to choose between the life she wants and the life her skills demand. "Whatever it takes to keep you safe," Emma answers, and for the first time since coming home, she means every word. That evening, the Stone sisters sit on their front porch as sunset paints the Iowa sky in shades of amber and rose. Grace rocks slowly in their mother's old chair, while Emma maintains the tactical awareness that has become second nature. The peaceful scene masks the tension both women feel. The knowledge that their quiet life in Millbrook has been shattered beyond repair. "You're going to leave, aren't you?" Grace asks quietly, her teacher's intuition reading the signs Emma thinks she's hiding. Emma doesn't answer immediately. She watches a red-tailed hawk circle over the wheat field, remembering how the vast Afghan landscape looked through a rifle scope. "The network doesn't usually give people choices about deployment," she says finally. "But you have a choice about how you respond," Grace points out, with the gentle stubbornness that made her such an effective kindergarten teacher. "You came home once. You can do it again." Emma turns to study her sister's face. Grace has always been the optimistic twin, the one who believes in happy endings and second chances. The past week has shown her a darker world than she ever imagined, but her fundamental faith in good triumphing over evil remains unshaken. "Grace, what happened with Marcus Rothwell was just the beginning," Emma says carefully. "Beth Woods made it clear that there are bigger threats out there. Organized enemies who target communities like Millbrook specifically because they're vulnerable." "Then maybe those communities need protection," Grace replies. "Maybe they need people like you and Beth Woods, standing between them and the darkness." The simple wisdom in her sister's words hits Emma like a physical blow. She's spent 2 years trying to escape her military identity, but Grace is suggesting something different. Not escape, but transformation. Using her skills to protect instead of destroy. Building communities instead of eliminating targets. "You're talking about staying," Emma realizes, "making a stand here instead of running toward the next assignment." Grace nods thoughtfully. She's been processing the implications of Emma's revealed identity for days, and her conclusion surprises them both. "You said the network places people in small towns for protection. What if instead of hiding what you are, you embraced it? What if Millbrook became the kind of place where people like Marcus Rothwell know they're not welcome?" Emma considers the possibility. Millbrook has good people who deserve protection, land worth defending, and now a sister who understands the cost of safety. The network wants her to disappear into another identity, but Grace is offering something more valuable, the chance to build something lasting. "It would mean giving up the cover story," Emma warns. "Everyone would know what I am, what I've done. Some people won't be comfortable with a killer living next door." "Some people weren't comfortable with Marcus Rothwell either," Grace points out, "but they tolerated him because they were afraid. Maybe it's time they had something to be hopeful about instead." Emma looks out over the wheat field where she learned to find peace after 8 years of war. Tomorrow, she'll call Beth Woods and explain that the network has gained an ally, not lost an asset. Millbrook will become something new, a town where former warriors put down roots and grow something better than the violence they left behind. "What's a farm girl gonna do?" Emma murmurs to herself. Grace smiles for the first time in weeks. Her sister is finally coming home, not just to the farm, but to herself. "She's gonna plant seeds," Grace answers, "and see what grows."